Hello, good evening and welcome to ITV News Anglia.
Here's a look at tonight's main stories.
Preparing for another tough winter, managers and medical staff at one of our busiest hospitals tell us what they and we can do to help get through it.
It's important that we are able to look after all the people who come in who are very poorly without putting too much pressure on the rest of our colleagues. So yeah, very important to all get vaccinated.
Plus, tackling the cost of living crisis, how Colchester's charities, churches and council are joining forces against poverty.
And a few tricky details in the weather to get through, but I'll have the forecast for you coming up later in the programme.
Hello from Becky and me and welcome to the programme.
First tonight, the mounting pressure on our NHS as staff prepare for a busy winter.
Bosses at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge say there is already an extremely high demand across all of its services.
They're expecting the double threat of flu and COVID to make A&E extra busy over the next couple of months. The Trust is having to build a temporary ward to cope with demand, and our reporter Matthew Hudson joins us from the hospital now. Matt.
Yes, there's been plenty of predictions that this winter could actually be the busiest that the NHS has ever faced, and given how busy last winter was, that does sound pretty ominous. So today here at Addenbrooke's, they've been setting out their battle plan for us, if you like, the extra resources with more beds, more staff and more operations now being carried out than there were before the pandemic began. But they've also been talking to us about what we, the public, can do to help, the steps that we can take to help ensure that services are not overwhelmed in the coming weeks and months. Research nurse Dot Chatfield getting her COVID booster at a clinic for staff at Addenbrooke's. Reducing illness among those who work here is a key objective for the hospital as it gears up for what is expected to be perhaps its most gruelling winter ever.
The last two surges that we've had lots of staff off ill, and it does have knock-on effects, and so it's important that we are able to look after all the people who come in who are very poorly without putting too much pressure on the rest of our colleagues. So yeah, very important to all get vaccinated.
At this clinic, staff can receive both their flu shot and their COVID booster injection. If you're in a green line, you're here for flu. If you're in a blue line, then you're here for COVID. And indeed, they can have both inoculations in the same visit. It goes flu in the right arm, COVID in the left. Consultant anaesthetist Lisa Grimes was doing just that today, starting with the flu jab. The clinic could vaccinate all 12,000 staff. The take-up of first COVID shots here was 96%. This is only one weapon in the hospital's armoury as it prepares for the tough months ahead. A new 20-bed ward, T2, which opened in the summer, will help combat so-called bed blocking. It provides places for patients who are medically fit for discharge but need community care. A further 56-bed general unit will open early next year, giving the hospital much-needed extra capacity. In total, 5 new wards with 116 beds will aim to get waiting lists down. The existing ward D8 is used by patients recovering after surgery. Becky Watts has had her second hip replacement. She is also receiving treatment for stage 4 cancer.
My surgeon said to me, you know, you've been so strong and done so well with your treatments and everything else, that actually we want to see you up and doing with your horses and walking your dogs and doing the things you love doing without being in pain.
At the height of the pandemic, this ward was used for COVID cases. Now staff are trying to deal with the huge backlog in elective surgery.
We have theatres working at 100% of pre-COVID numbers, which is very encouraging. We're operating on over 500 elective patients a week at Addenbrooke's Hospital. That doesn't include Papworth. We are working late days, we are working weekends. Our pre-admission services are preparing patients for theatre, but this will take time to run through.
Lisa Grimes gets her COVID booster and is ready to return to work. Over the coming months, the NHS is going to need Lisa and her colleagues, perhaps like never before. Matthew Hudson, ITV News, Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge.
Well, Roland Sinker is the Chief Executive of Cambridge University Hospitals and joins us on the programme. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Now, of course, it was incredibly tough for NHS staff last winter, and from Matt's report there, we see that you're expecting staff to work even harder this winter. How much busier do you actually expect to be?
So we're very busy as the National Health Service and the care sector at the moment, and we do, yes, expect it to get busier as we go into the winter. And there are two reasons for that. The first reason is there are people who need to be looked after, people coming into the emergency department and also people coming in for planned care, for surgical care or for specialist treatment here at Addenbrooke's. But we do have a plan in place to be able to look after those people.
Now, today, a committee of MPs said the government made serious mistakes early in the pandemic. They said that they were too late to lock down and test and trace was chaotic. Now, of course, your staff would have dealt with the brunt of that devastation early in the pandemic. How did it affect them? How did it affect your teams?
So, if you think about the two waves of the pandemic that we faced here in Cambridge, so really the first half of 2020 and then the first 3 months of this calendar year, I'm enormously impressed and grateful to all of our staff across the health and care system, but also our partners in the university and industry who came together so tremendously to look after patients with COVID-19, but also patients without COVID-19. And that has been challenging for staff, and it remains challenging now. And what we have to do now is look forward to the plan for this winter and then subsequent years.
As you said, it is going to be a tough winter. What can we do to relieve the pressure on your staff and staff across the NHS?
My plea to our terrific community who have worked so well with us over the course of the last 18 months and before that is please access 111 first, who will be able to direct you to the most appropriate place for care. And then secondly, that flu vaccination, and then COVID vaccination and any booster jabs for COVID are absolutely key to keeping staff, our population safe and well, and the services here at Addenbrooke's and across the NHS working well.
Roland Sinker, thank you very much for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
In other news, one of the world's biggest shipping firms says it's diverting vessels away from Felixstowe port in Suffolk because of a build-up of cargo. Maersk is unloading container ships in Europe and using smaller vessels to get goods here, according to the Financial Times. The firm says Felixstowe, which deals with just over a third of UK freight containers, is one of the worst hit ports. The port said there had been congestion, but the situation was improving.
A play team working with Children's Services at Ipswich Hospital has won an award. It comes from the charity Starlight, which highlights the importance of play for seriously ill children. They were chosen for their work to help young patients normalise their time in hospital.
Well done to them. And Newmarket's Grand National winning jockey Bob Champion is to be honoured too by the Princess Royal. The charity he founded to fund research for male cancer has raised more than £15 million in the last 40 years. He'll be made a CBE at a ceremony at Windsor Castle.
Now, with energy and food prices increasing, the Universal Credit £20 top-up being taken away and national insurance to increase next year, there are fears more of us will face financial hardship.
Well, in Colchester, a poverty forum has been set up to try to bring the town together to tackle it. Charlie Frost has the details.
Sandra's home in Colchester is lovely and cosy, but things haven't always been so stable. When her children were younger, she fell into financial difficulty and was facing eviction from her home.
I was fearful because I thought, where are we going to go, where are we going to end up, you know, and the new family weren't able to help as such, and I just felt I'd let the boys down.
With the help of Colchester Christians Against Poverty, Sandra stopped the spiral.
I think it took 3 years for us to become debt-free. And it was a good feeling to become debt-free.
Now the charity want to help more people achieve that feeling, but with fears the number of those slipping into poverty is rising, it wants Colchester to join forces to tackle it. There's warnings Britain is facing a cost of living crisis. First, the pandemic put pressure on finances, and now millions of us are facing the cost of fuel, food and petrol going up by hundreds of pounds, while salaries aren't rising at the same rate. And that's why churches, the council and charities have come together here to start the Colchester Poverty Forum. The hope is they'll meet regularly and share resources.
People who already were struggling are now going to be in a desperate strait, which means all the organisations that have been here today are going to be working much harder. They will need to expand their volunteer base. They will need more resources, probably more premises and everything else, because these are the people who are going to help the people who are most in need.
Colchester uniting to support one another. Charlie Frost, ITV News.
Now, just before we get the weather forecast, this is an amazing story. Two ancient Egyptian sphinxes, they turned up in a garden in Suffolk.
They were collected from a house near Clare, along with various other garden ornaments. Now, they were thought to be around 200 years old. They were given a guide price of £300 to £500.
Fair enough, you may say. Well, the bidding at Manda's Auctioneers in Sudbury began at £200, but with numerous phone and internet bidders clearly convinced they were actually thousands of years old. And within 15 minutes, they sold to an international auction gallery for, wait for it, drum roll, £195,000.
Well, when the sale started, we had 4 phone bidders and we had quite a few people online. So the bidding starts at 200, and just because we had no idea at all, really. And then someone shouted out on the telephone 5,000. So everything sort of like, wow, what's going on here? And then got to 10,000 and I thought, oh, they're going to be so happy. That's great. It's a really good price for them. And then they went right up to 195 in the end. So it was really exciting, actually, yeah. And at one point it got to 150,000 and I was beginning to wonder if and when it would stop. It just seemed unbelievable, really.
I mean, I'm going to say it. They're not the most attractive.
Well, it doesn't matter, but you can't imagine the ancient Egyptians ever believed they would end up as garden ornaments and on what look like roller skates on little wheels.
Right, we've got a shorter programme tonight because of the football, so here's Ash with the weather.
Well, we've been talking about high pressure being in charge of the weather, but the weather can get a little bit complicated sometimes with high pressure when we get these weather fronts trapped underneath them, and that's what we've seen through today. This weather front running into that high pressure, so we've had just a few showers around, some cloud as well, so a little bit of complication in the forecast, but here's the full details.
Greater Anglia sponsors ITV Anglia Weather.
Yes, well, it has certainly clouded over the last few hours. There's been some showers around as well, but this morning was an absolutely stunning sunrise. Certainly there was some sunny spells around today, but more recently some showers pushed in, but they're now starting to clear away. So over the next few hours it will turn dry, and under those clear skies, overnight temperatures are going to fall away, so potentially a little bit chilly first thing tomorrow morning. Now by the end of the night in the towns and cities, temperatures just about holding up at around 7 degrees Celsius. Away from here it could be as low though as 4 or 5 degrees, so quite chilly first thing in the morning. So we will have some good spells of sunshine around at first, but a little bit more cloud as we head through the afternoon tomorrow. Overall though, a dry day, and temperature wise very similar to today. Temperatures reaching around 15 degrees Celsius, so we are still just holding up where we would expect for this time of year. Now the next high tide at Clacton is at 11 minutes past 5 and then again at 12 minutes to 6 tomorrow evening. Now from Wednesday into Thursday, high pressure has been largely in charge of our weather, but we have had some weather fronts trapped underneath the high. That high pressure is going to sink away to the south, and underneath this high we're going to continue to see a good deal of cloud around over the next few days, and day on day it's going to be a little bit chilly as well overnight.
Greater Anglia sponsors ITV Anglia Weather.
Not too bad then.
Not too bad. Well, that is it from the two of us. Enjoy the football if you're watching it. We'll see you tomorrow.
Take care. Bye-bye.